You didn't come across this message by accident. Something in you paused, even if just for a second before you decided to stay. That pause wasn't random. It was recognition, not from your thoughts, but from something deeper that has always known there was more to you than what the world could see. And if you felt that quiet, persistent sense your entire life, like you're here but not fully part of what's happening around you, then you already know exactly what I'm talking about. There has always been a difference. You felt it before you had words for it. Maybe it showed up when you were younger, sitting in a room full of people who seemed to connect so easily, laughing at things that didn't quite land for you, forming bonds that felt natural to them but somehow distant to you. You tried to understand it. You tried to follow the same patterns, say the same things, react the same way, and sometimes you succeeded, at least on the surface. But deep down, there was always that quiet awareness that you were performing something rather than actually being it. It wasn't that you didn't want connection. In fact, you probably wanted it more than most. You felt everything more deeply. You noticed things others overlooked. The tone in someone's voice, the shift in energy in a room, the unspoken meaning behind simple conversations. You saw beneath the surface while everyone else seemed comfortable staying on it. And that awareness, that depth, made you feel both connected and completely alone at the same time. You may have been told you were too much, too sensitive, too intense, too quiet, too different. And over time, those words started to shape how you saw yourself. You learned to adjust, to soften your reactions, to hold back your thoughts, to become more acceptable, more understandable, more like everyone else. Not because you wanted to lose yourself, but because you were trying to find a place where you could finally belong. But no matter how much you adapted, something never fully aligned. There was always a subtle tension, like trying to fit into a space that was never designed for you. You could get close enough to blend in, close enough to not stand out too much, but never close enough to feel completely at home. And that feeling stayed with you through different phases of your life, different environments, different people. The pattern repeated itself in ways that were too consistent to ignore. At some point, you probably started questioning yourself, wondering if something was wrong, if maybe you were the problem, if maybe you just needed to try harder, adjust more, become better at being what others expected. And that thought can be exhausting, because no matter how much effort you put in, the result never fully satisfies that deeper part of you that knows there's something missing. But here's where everything begins to shift. What if that feeling was never a flaw? What if the reason you couldn't fully fit in was not because you failed, but because you were never meant to? What if that quiet sense of separation wasn't rejection, but recognition of something within you that doesn't operate on the same level as the environment you were trying to belong to? Sit with that for a moment, because it changes everything. The world tends to measure value through sameness, through how easily someone can integrate, adapt, and mirror what already exists. But not everything is designed to blend in. Some things are designed to stand apart, not for attention, but for function. And when something is built differently, it doesn't respond to the same conditions as everything else around it. That difference you've always felt is not random. It's not accidental. It's not something that developed over time because of circumstances alone. It's something that was already there, something that shaped how you experience the world from the very beginning. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you perceive reality, all of it carries a certain depth and awareness that doesn't align easily with environments built on surface-level interaction. And that misalignment creates friction, not because one is better than the other, but because they operate on different frequencies. You've probably noticed this in subtle ways. How certain spaces drain you quickly while others feel strangely calming. How some conversations feel empty no matter how long they last, while a single genuine moment can stay with you for years. How you can sense when something is off, even when everything appears normal on the outside. These are not random sensitivities. They are signals, indicators that your internal system is tuned differently. And when something is tuned differently, it cannot fully resonate with everything around it. That's not a weakness, that's design. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to make sense of yourself, trying to figure out why you feel the way you do, why certain things affect you more deeply, why you can't just exist in the same way others seem to. That constant questioning, that search for understanding, it's not something everyone experiences. It comes from a place within you that is aware enough to recognize that there is more happening beneath the surface. And that awareness can feel isolating, because it's hard to explain something you don't fully understand yourself. It's hard to share an experience that doesn't have clear language around it. So instead, you carry it quietly. You observe more than you express, you feel more than you show. And over time, that creates a gap between who you are internally and how you appear externally. But that gap is not meant to stay there forever. It exists because you were never shown how to integrate what you carry into the world around you. You were shown how to adapt, how to adjust, how to survive within existing structures, but not how to exist as something that was never meant to fully conform to those structures in the first place. And this is where the truth begins to reveal itself. You were never meant to fit in the way you thought you were, not because you are incapable, but because your role was never to become a copy of what already exists. There is something in you that doesn't align with the ordinary patterns, and that misalignment is not a mistake. It is the very thing that defines your path. The feeling of being different was not something you developed over time. It was something you recognized over time. It was always there, quietly shaping your experiences, guiding your reactions, influencing your choices in ways you couldn't fully explain. And the more you tried to ignore it, the more persistent it became, because it was never meant to be ignored. It was meant to be understood, and understanding it begins with a simple but powerful shift. You stop asking, What's wrong with me? And start asking, what is this difference trying to show me? That question alone changes the direction of your entire perspective. It moves you from self-doubt into self-discovery, from confusion into clarity. You begin to see your experiences differently. The moments where you felt out of place were not failures, they were indicators. The relationships that didn't fully connect were not proof that you were lacking. They were reflections of mismatch. The environments that drained you were not challenges you needed to overcome by forcing yourself to adapt. They were signals that you were operating in a space that didn't align with what you are. And once you start to see that, something inside you begins to settle. Not because everything suddenly makes sense, but because you realize that the question was never about fixing yourself. It was about understanding your design. You were never meant to fit in the way you were trying to. And the sooner you stop measuring yourself against standards that were never built for you, the sooner you begin to see the truth of what you are. This is where the awakening begins. Not as a sudden transformation, but as a quiet recognition. A realization that the difference you've been carrying is not something to hide, not something to suppress, not something to fix. It's something to understand, something to step into. Because what you thought was separation might actually be direction, and what you thought was isolation might actually be preparation. What if the parts of your life that made the least sense were actually the most intentional? Not random, not unfortunate, not something that happened because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, but something structured with a precision you couldn't see while you were inside it. Because if you look back honestly, there is a pattern. Certain experiences repeated themselves. Certain emotions followed you no matter where you went. Different people, different environments, but the same underlying lesson appearing again and again, almost as if something was trying to get your attention. You weren't growing the way others seemed to grow, and that alone can make you feel like you're falling behind. Watching people move forward with clarity while you sit in uncertainty. Watching them build connections that seem effortless while yours feel complicated. Watching them settle into lives that feel stable while you feel like something in you is still searching. It's easy to assume that means something is missing in you. But what if it means something entirely different? Imagine a field filled with seeds. Most of them begin to grow quickly. They follow a predictable cycle. They sprout, they stretch toward the light, and within a short time their direction is clear. But scattered among them are a few seeds that don't follow that pattern. They stay beneath the surface longer. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. If you didn't know better, you might assume they were dormant in the wrong way, that they failed to respond to the same conditions as everything else around them. But what you don't see is what's happening beneath the surface. Those seeds are developing something deeper first. Their roots are extending in ways the others don't need to. They are preparing for a kind of growth that requires more stability, more depth, more internal structure before anything becomes visible. And because of that, their timeline looks different, slower on the outside but far more intentional underneath. You are one of those seeds. The periods in your life where it felt like nothing was happening, where you felt stuck, disconnected, or uncertain, those were not empty spaces, they were preparation. The loneliness that forced you to sit with yourself, the confusion that made you question everything, the moments where things fell apart without explanation. All of it was shaping something within you that cannot be built in comfort. There are things you understand now that you didn't understand before. Not because someone taught you directly, but because you experienced them. You learned how to read people without being told. You learned how to sense truth beneath words. You learned how to navigate emotions that most people avoid. That kind of awareness doesn't come from easy environments. It comes from pressure, from contrast, from being placed in situations where you had to develop it just to stay grounded. And yet, while you were going through it, it didn't feel like growth. It felt like confusion. It felt like isolation. It felt like you were being left behind while everyone else was moving forward. That's the part no one explains. Preparation rarely feels like progress while you're inside it. There's a story I want you to consider. Not as something separate from you, but as something that mirrors what you've already lived through. There was someone who always knew they were different, even if they couldn't explain why. They noticed things others ignored. They felt things more intensely. They understood situations without needing them to be explained. But instead of being recognized for it, they were often misunderstood. People told them they were too sensitive, too observant, too quiet, too much. And over time, they started to believe it. So they adapted. They learned to hold back, to filter their thoughts, to soften their presence so they could fit into spaces that weren't built for them. And for a while it worked. Life became easier on the surface. There was less resistance, fewer misunderstandings, more acceptance. But something else started to fade. The clarity they once had became quieter. The confidence in what they felt started to weaken. The more they adjusted to fit in, the further they moved away from the very thing that made them different. And eventually that created a different kind of discomfort, not the discomfort of being misunderstood, but the discomfort of not recognizing themselves anymore. That's the turning point most people don't talk about. The moment where fitting in starts to feel worse than standing out ever did. And when that moment comes, there are only two options. Continue adjusting, continue shrinking, continue living in a way that feels acceptable but not true, or start returning to what you were before you learned to filter yourself. That return doesn't happen all at once. It starts quietly. You begin to trust your instincts again. You stop second-guessing what you feel. You allow yourself to think without immediately editing it for approval. And as small as those shifts seem, they change something fundamental. Because the moment you stop performing, your environment starts to respond differently. People who were comfortable with the version of you that was easy to understand may start to feel distant. Not because you did something wrong, but because you are no longer matching the version of you they were used to. And at the same time, something else begins to happen. New connections start to appear, conversations feel more real, interactions feel less forced. It's not that your world becomes larger immediately, it becomes more aligned. This is what happens when you stop trying to grow in conditions that were never meant for you. Your life has not been random. The delays, the confusion, the isolation, all of it has been shaping a level of awareness that requires time to develop. You are not being held back. You are being built differently. And the reason it had to happen that way is simple. What you are meant to become cannot be rushed. It cannot be copied. It cannot be formed through the same experiences that shape everyone else. It requires depth. It requires contrast. It requires you to go through things that force you to understand yourself without relying on external validation. That's why your path has felt heavier at times. Not because you were given more than you could handle, but because you were being prepared for something that requires more from you. When you start to see it this way, your past begins to make sense. The experiences that once felt like obstacles start to look like structure. The confusion starts to look like a process. The isolation starts to look like space that was necessary for you to develop what you now carry. You were never falling behind. You were moving through a different process. And the most important part of that process is this. Everything you went through brought you closer to understanding your own frequency. Not in a conceptual way, but in a lived way. You know what drains you. You know what feels real. You know what aligns and what doesn't, even if you can't always explain it. That awareness is not accidental. It's the result of everything you've experienced. And now you're at a point where that awareness is no longer just something you notice. It's something you're meant to use. Because the same difference that made your path harder is the same difference that will guide you forward. There's a moment that comes quietly, almost unnoticed at first, where everything you've been questioning begins to turn into something you can no longer ignore. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't arrive with certainty or proof. It arrives as a subtle shift inside you, a point where continuing to doubt yourself starts to feel heavier than trusting what you already know. And this is where most people hesitate. Because even after everything you've experienced, there is still a part of you that asks, what if I'm wrong? What if the way you see things, the way you feel, the sense that there is something different about you? What if it's just something you've created to make sense of your life? That question is real. It's grounded. It's the result of years of being told, directly or indirectly, that your perception might not be accurate. But look at that question closely. Doubt like that doesn't come from arrogance. It doesn't come from someone trying to feel superior. It comes from awareness. From someone who has learned to question themselves, because they've had to navigate a world where their experience didn't always match what others could understand. And that kind of doubt, as uncomfortable as it is actually part of what has kept you grounded. Now here's the shift. Instead of asking whether you're completely right or completely wrong, ask something more honest. Has your perception shown you things that later proved to be true? Have you sensed things about people, about situations, about outcomes that didn't make sense at the time but became clear later? If the answer is yes, even in small ways, then what you carry is not something imagined. It's something developed. And development comes with responsibility. Not the kind that weighs you down, but the kind that asks you to stop ignoring what you already know. Because the longer you stay in between, half trusting yourself, half holding back, the more tension you create in your own life. You feel it when you silence yourself. You feel it when you go along with things that don't align. You feel it when you pretend not to notice what is clearly in front of you. That tension is not random. It's the result of being out of alignment with yourself. And alignment doesn't require a dramatic change. It starts with small decisions. Choosing to listen to what you feel instead of dismissing it. Choosing to step back from what drains you instead of forcing yourself to stay. Choosing honesty over comfort, even if that honesty is only something you admit to yourself at first. Because the truth is, the more you align with yourself, the clearer everything becomes. You stop needing constant validation. You stop over-explaining your choices. You stop trying to make everyone understand you before you allow yourself to move forward. Not because you don't care, but because you realize that not everyone is meant to see things the way you do. And that's okay. There will be people who misunderstand you, people who think you've changed, people who feel uncomfortable when you stop being the version of yourself they were used to. That reaction is natural. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, it means you're no longer matching the expectations that were built around who you used to be. And this is where many people pull back. They feel that shift in others and immediately adjust themselves to restore the old balance. They return to being easier to understand, easier to accept, easier to fit into the same patterns. And in doing that, they lose the progress they were starting to make within themselves. But what if you didn't do that this time? What if instead of adjusting back, you allowed the shift to happen fully? Some connections will stay, and you might be surprised which ones do. There are people who will meet you at that new level, who will understand you without needing you to explain everything, who will feel more comfortable with the real version of you than the one you were performing. And some connections will fade. Not because they were meaningless, but because they were built around a version of you that no longer exists. Letting them go doesn't erase what they were. It simply makes space for what actually aligns with who you are becoming. This is the part that requires trust. Not trust in something outside of you, but trust in your own experience. Trust that what you felt all along has been leading you somewhere, even when you couldn't see where that was. Trust that the difference you carry is not something you need to hide in order to succeed, but something you need to understand in order to move forward. Because when you stop resisting it, something changes. Your decisions become clearer. Your energy becomes more stable. You stop scattering yourself across things that don't matter and start focusing on what actually feels real to you. And that doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes more honest. You begin to notice the difference between what is temporary and what is meaningful. You stop chasing what looks right from the outside and start building something that feels right on the inside. And over time, that shift creates a completely different kind of life. One that is not based on fitting in, but on being aligned. And alignment has its own kind of strength. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It doesn't depend on approval. It doesn't collapse under pressure because it's not built on something external. It's built on a consistent connection with yourself. That's where your stability comes from. Not from controlling everything around you, but from understanding what belongs to you and what doesn't. From knowing when to stay and when to step away. From recognizing when something feels right, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. And once you reach that point, the question changes again. It's no longer, why am I different? It becomes, what am I going to do with it? Because the difference itself was never the problem. It was always the starting point. Now it becomes direction. And the direction doesn't need to be fully clear yet. It just needs to be honest. One step at a time, one decision at a time, you begin to move in a way that reflects who you actually are instead of who you thought you needed to be. That's how everything starts to shift, not all at once, but steadily, quietly, in ways that may not be obvious to others at first, but are undeniable to you. You feel it in how you respond, how you think, how you carry yourself. There is less confusion, less resistance, less need to force things into place, and more clarity, more awareness, more certainty in the things that matter. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to what was always there before you learned to question it, before you learned to filter it, before you learned to shrink it. You don't need to create something different. You need to stop holding back what already exists. Because everything you've been through has been moving you toward this point, not to change you into something else, but to bring you back into alignment with what you already are. And once you stop resisting that, once you stop trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you, you begin to notice something important. You're no longer searching for where you belong. You're creating it.